even sitting at the table. That is the hardest problem. They don't even put digital sometimes at the table on the right-hand side.
Well, that's because all the digital guys are young guys, you know? And really, you're going to have a 20-year-old staffer come in and tell us about digital? I mean, if you had it transcending all of the ages, like it really is, at the table, then we'll bring everybody in, young and old. Right. You can't just leave it to the young guys. No offense, young guys.
Well, I mean,
then the older guys have to learn these tools.
Well, yeah, it's our mission.
I would actually sort of challenge the whole idea of sort of the cliquish culture to some extent, because if you look at what the left did, the left's establishment institutions were not very effective at all. And so what you ended up with is people like Act Blue and Move On and all these other organizations that sprung up to challenge the established institutions. And so when we talk about, you know, changing the culture in an organization that's been around for 50, 60, 70 years, you're never going to do that. And so one of the things that we need to understand is, or if you are going to do it, you're going to do it on such an incredibly slow time scale that you're always going to be out of date with technology, because technology moves so much faster than the institutions in Washington. And so I started out as a state party guy, and I was always kind of griping about the establishment and the fact that we couldn't get the things we needed out of Washington, and we weren't allowed to play their parlor games and all that. But the fact is that you know, when I got here, I discovered that it's not really so much the case that we're playing parlor games. It's the fact that, you know, when you're in Washington, you're largely disconnected from the rest of the world. So it's not that I don't want younger people to be participating in this. It's just that I don't have the time to run around the country making those connections. Everybody that's ever reached out to me via email and said, hey, can I talk to you about this? Could I bounce an idea off of you? I've always made time, or tried to make time for that call, to have that conversation. I just don't get a lot of those. And so, you know, because they either don't know that I'm there, or I don't know that they're there. And so, you know, the challenge is finding people who are like-minded in forums and coming together, use things like Kickstarter to fund your organization, and create an organization that will compete with some of these things. You can be more effective than they can.
I have to challenge you on that, actually. The reality that we work in, and first off, I know that everyone came thinking we were going to talk about technology, and we probably are going to talk more about economics and the business of politics than we are about technology.
We'll get there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, because I think it's a great opportunity to share some ideas. But the simple fact of economics is that for technology to be innovative, you need capital, right? And capital requires customer base or outside capital to come in. I can't tell you the number of times we go around the nation. One of our resellers in some state has seen the greatest, coolest technology ever, and we know for darn sure there is no way that technology gets anywhere. In this business, it doesn't go anywhere. The only way it happens is through friends, right? If you have the best relationships, that's the only way that technology will succeed in this business. Simple fact that everyone up here knows is that, you know, 10, 15 people control the decisions made as to what technology is going to be implemented and what innovation is going to happen. And if you're not inside that group, then that technology does not come to fruition. That's just the reality. That's how this works. The only way that changes is through some major shifts. And I do have to give Chairman Priebus one heck of a compliment. I'll do this with hesitation. The meeting on Thursday, new Chief of Staff Mike Shields obviously, I think, gets it, understands the need for a culture change, and has stated a goal to do just that. To change that. And why the RNC is so important is because the RNC controls the largest budget, which means, i.e., capital for investment in technology and for innovation. So if they're committed to innovating on technology, so will others. And the reality comes down to, if that culture change can happen, it will expand the access to allow others, and I do mean allow. Business is set where manipulation is the way that things happen. If somebody doesn't want it to happen, if they don't want new technology to come out, it's just not going to happen.
I would just actually challenge that, because the problem with relying on the RNC, because I've seen this, you know, from when I was at the RNC as the e-campaign director, I saw this. Everybody kept saying, why doesn't the RNC start another Act Blue for the right? Why doesn't the RNC do this? Why doesn't the RNC do this? We were prohibited by law from doing that. You can't start Act Blue from the RNC. It has to be done through a PAC, because only a PAC can act as a pass-through entity. And so there are not only problems with you know, the idea of just saying the RNC should handle all this because they've got a big budget. You've got specific legal prohibitions on some of these things, and so you've got to have other institutions.
I wasn't suggesting that the RNC should handle this. What I was suggesting was that whatever the RNC does, is the course that happens because they control the largest budget. If there's the greatest new technology to integrate Facebook with door-to-door, it doesn't matter, you come up with it, we'll hopefully talk about a couple of these cool ideas. The greatest new idea that comes out, it will never see the light of day. It will never have any substantial impact in our industry unless the folks that are around that circle in Washington decide it will.
So I think there's a couple things. Well, there's been a lot of conversation about 10 or 15 people kind of controlling what's going on in the Republican Party or whatnot. What I've seen on the other side is that when they made decisions on digital, it wasn't like this is a digital-only decision. It was they used data. How much does it cost to register a voter going door to door with a staff member, and how much does it cost to register that voter online? And made decisions on their political, on their mobilization, on their money fundraising side of things, using data to make that decision. If digital then fits into that. So I think for a lot of this, there's been a fear by some people that you need to see an immediate ROI or we're going to turn everything off. And we need to be this culture, the 10 to 15 people or so that have been talked about. I think for them, we need to show through data that it is a viable path for us to use digital technologies to do these different things. And then also just have them allow us to kind of make mistakes on the way as well.
Now, you know what I hear, I've sat here and I'm listening to the technology and the data. There was one thing that I saw during the campaign was Barack Obama and I think it was Valerie Gerrit brought in a whole lot of their bloggers, and they brought in a whole lot of their little websites that filtered that information out. And even though he didn't sit in there for a long time, he welcomed them into the White House, and he told them, this is the message that y'all are going to put out. And those real popular little websites, TooFab and all those websites that usually are low information, those are the ones that kept riding that message, and they kept putting the message out. Now you keep on talking about the being in the room and the data and all that. All the kids really don't know anything about that. I myself, conservative blogger, News Ninja 2012, over the last year, especially before the election, I didn't have any TV or whatnot. But I'm close to almost 25,000 followers right now because I stuck to the message of the conservative group. I don't have any of the data and the technical to go with, so I just go with the conservative message. And people react to that. And I just believe that there's a disconnect between the top and the conservative bloggers side too. Because if they would bring us into a room, the majority of us, and say, okay, now look, this is what we need to do. This is the message that we need to put out. This is, instead of like throwing money at the top. And with the tech guys and getting the bells and whistles and the thing like that. I mean, there's a lot of us that can put that message out there. A lot of people are following the conservative bloggers. So, I mean, I just think that there is a major disconnect between the top and the people that conservative bloggers like yourself.
So, when I'm gonna circle on your point and something that Nansen said, and kind of move the direction one step ahead here a little bit. We talked about the grassroots. We talked about the people out in the field, the retail level users or consumers of politics and technology. Do we have a lack of people that understand what to do with data, technology, social media, not just the internet as a whole, but a armed and equipped army of people that are willing to go out there and learn how to analyze a county voter file or to look at data analytics? Do we have that lack of training across the country? Is that where we have one of our biggest deficits, like a mind deficit?
We most definitely do have the talent, and we have many folks out there who are as smart as the digital folks on the other side. Let me just read a quick quote, because I like quotes. The democratic technology ecosystem has embraced the free market, whereas the Republican one sort of runs on socialism, with the RNC being the overlord. Some of you may recognize that from the infamous Draper article in the New York Times Magazine. That was actually Patrick Ruffini's quote. When I thought it sums up the cultural issue very well. And it's certainly ironic that we're not treating the technology side in a free market manner the way the Democrats are.
I would just build on that. It's not necessarily a lack of talent. I think if there's, and this has come up, an organizational question of how do you truly integrate the talent and the technology into organizations. So it's not just necessarily a siloed digital team, but what is the role of technology within the finance group, within the political group, within the communication group, and it really being embraced across these organizations, as opposed to sort of existing in more of a silo, leveraging that talent everywhere that it can help the broader efforts.
So Amanda, how does that get down to like a county party chairperson though?
I'm going to take the opposite. I think that there is a drought of talent. I mean, the idea, we all know about Harper Reid running Obama's, his tech, his IT, and he scaled it. But what about the guy, there was a kid who wrote an algorithm one night and it actually matched emails back to the voter file at a 5% higher rate. What about that kid? I mean, that is someone who came from a culture of technology, of hackathons and that kind of stuff, that we don't have that. And so, to bring it down to your point, when you walk into every race, should be qualifying the voter file, running vote models, appending everything to the voter file, and then refreshing vote models every day. That would be fantastic. But how many people know how to do that in this room? How many people know how to do that in a county party? There is an absolute drought of culture. And so I just want to echo what Gerrit was saying earlier. It's a cultural problem, not a technological problem, not a data problem.
It's a cultural. Austin, it's a cultural problem, but I don't agree, it's not a lack of talent, because you've got, Alan just looked over my way, and here you've got two middle-aged guys, one from the West Coast, one from Minnesota, and, between the two of us, there's a huge amount of talent and knowledge about how to do these things with emails and optimizing and all those things that can be done.
Going back to Chad's comment about the counties, I was in California GOP State Convention a couple weeks ago. About 58 counties, I believe, all the 58 counties out there. And each of those counties, 6 of them still didn't have websites. So, that to me is, I'm asking myself what they say in Spanish, in serio, really? Really? You don't have a website by now? Why have we not got the infrastructure down right? I think the talent question can be answered with one word: training. I think, why can't we do IT boot camps every, week or every month? Why can't we do more webinars? Why can't we share our knowledge, on a continuous basis?
The other guys are very disciplined about this.
And that is correct. And not only they're disciplined, they have a schedule.
That's right.
And they work backwards. What are we doing on October of 2016? Does anyone know? Can anyone tell me?
I'm doing a seminar.
I'll be there.
So there's on the question of empower action is going to be sort of a startup for training and sort of getting the talent pool together and maybe doing all things that craft. We'll see. I mean, maybe that will. Does anyone know what the Analyst Institute was, set up by the Democrats in 2006? They took researchers and they took practitioners and they basically put them together and they figured out how to get messaging, how to basically get people to go vote that no one else had done it, right? We definitely need more of that kind of collaboration.
See, I see it a little bit. I see it a little bit differently. We've got. We have to unleash the people that are already engaged and involved. And what we found in our own party is when I became chairman of the party in Oregon, there were a lot of people that wanted to do this, but they were so far down in the organization that their voice couldn't be heard. And what we had to do is break away some of those old structures. The people that don't do websites, you know, that they never even thought about doing that, to just unleash the people. We used an open source software package to kind of coalesce the efforts together. And the people that have come out of the woodwork that are, you know, multi-$100,000 a year database people at some of the biggest companies in the country that are volunteering 20 hours a week of their time, we just needed to give them a voice. And my role was kind of a blocking back. I was just opening holes for them, and they're the ones that are taking the ball and running through. And I think that's what we need to do. And I do have to applaud what Chairman Priebus has started to do that, to open it up and to allow those kids to come through with the palm.
Gerrit? Well, I think there's a talent problem in that we're not training enough, but there's not a talent problem in that there's a lot of talented people out there we just haven't gotten in touch with. I mean, already in the last half hour, someone on Twitter said he's trying to knock on the door of the GOP and he can't get in. I mean, I just have a general announcement. If you think you're good at digital and you want to be on a House campaign, you know, come talk to me. Where the NRCC is wide open, and I need talented people to put on campaigns in 2014. And we're not messing around, and we're trying to change the culture. And we have a flat, fast-moving organization that is trying to take on all comers. So that's my.
Hey, Jeff, I just actually. As part of this conversation, there's actually been a great question that was submitted via Twitter that I'd like to sort of tackle as part of this, and that is somebody had asked the question. Jonathan, are you in? Hand up, Jonathan Gabe? Right there. Okay, there you are. So you asked a question which I thought was perfect for this discussion, which is, okay, if campaigns thought of themselves as a startup organization, what would they look like? What would their structure be? And I think that that's a critical question that a lot of campaigns need to be asking, because we typically have always built our organization on message, money, and mobilization. So you've got a political guy, a finance guy, and a communications guy, and there's really no concept of the fact that technology drives all of that. And so, I mean, I think that is a critical question that everybody up here, I'd be kind of curious to get thoughts on, because my thought, I think a lot about organization structures, because the bureaucracy that I've seen in and around Washington and government at the RNC on campaigns is just staggering. Clay Johnson had a great thing yesterday where he talked about OMB, and the OMB had to approve a form that said, did you find this article helpful, yes or no? And that form, because it has to go through OMB, has a 6-month reply period as to whether that form is sufficient. That is not uncommon when you start looking at what's going on in campaigns as well. You know, something as simple as, is this website helpful, yes or no? There's discussion of that up and down the chain. And so I think your question is critical, because the person who is in charge of sort of all of that is sort of a chief technology officer for the organization. The RNC's had e-campaign directors, they've had digital directors, they've called that job, you know, the director of network and online services. I mean, in the 20 years that I've been dealing with the RNC, it's had a bunch of different titles, but that person has always been somewhat buried down the food chain. When I went to the Bush campaign, the online communications was buried 3 levels deep in communications. It went from Ken to Nicole to Steve Schmidt down to Chuck. And they said, well, gee, Chuck's not being very effective. Why do you think that is? And it's because he's buried in the basement. You're not listening to him. And so that was why they restructured the campaign for the Bush campaign and elevated that to a senior staff thing. That person who's in charge of digital needs to be in the kitchen cabinet, not even the senior staff, because the senior staff, many decisions you discover were made at the chairman's house over the weekend by him and 3 of his friends, and they made it in absence of the technology input. Whoever takes over as your campaign manager, whoever takes over as your chairman, needs to have somebody in their trusted inner circle that is there for every single decision that's made.
And that's crucial because of the distribution that technology can provide. Mm-hmm. It's not because of the political insight that technology person will have, but they will figure out on how to take that message, that mobilization, or how to raise more money, and basically be able to distribute it through various tactics, whether it be Google, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Microsoft, whatever it is. And that is the fundamental thing that people are not getting right now, is that there's a disconnect. And we're still doing direct mail, and we're still doing all this TV, and and you know, internet is like this much. We're still in the single-digit percentages.
So one of our problems is we're making tech too hard. There are so many people out there, and like Gerrit says, tech should just be part of everything we do. We should not have separate tech divisions. everybody, including the chairman, should learn. But our problem is we don't teach shortcuts. We don't help make it user-friendly to teach the people. I mean, not everybody's like me. I'm a 59-year-old woman, and tech, I wake up and it's just in my life. You know, I go fishing, I have my tech with me. I do, in the car, I have tech with me. What we have to do, and one of the things we do in Washington State too, is we get people in the room, teach them just the basics, and put them together with coders and see what happens. Because once they start communicating, and the biggest problem is messaging. If we can't build rapport with our fellow right side, how in the world are we going to convince people to get to the polls? And so we have to make it easier, be more approachable with technology, or we're never going to get that message out.
Right?
And I think that's what I was talking about earlier. Bring the conservative bloggers in for them to have a more broader seat at the table. I mean, I just got a tweet from somebody how we possibly could build off the blogs and appeal to low informational voters like the liberal side do. You know, I mean, they're out there. I mean, most of the young people, and I've seen a lot of young people here at this conference, they're already techie. They're walking around. You probably walked into them because they're tweeting or they're putting something on Facebook. But if you continuously send messages out from various places weekly, this is what we're doing this week. This is what's going on. These are events that's going on, and not just from one central location like the top, but I mean regional parts and through the conservative blogs, that partnership, it's going to grow. I mean, believe me, again, newsninja2012.com. I have grown. It's again, I've only been around since May of last year. We're talking about almost 2 million unique hits. Facebook is over 5,000 likes. YouTube is 3,000 subscribers, 2 million views. If you put the stuff out there that they want to see, then that's what they're going to look at, or that's what they're going to relate to. So I mean, just bring everybody in together and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Because everybody, I'm sure everybody has got great ideas. We just all can't talk at the same time, but we all have great ideas.
I have a friend, Gary Shapiro, who works at the Consumer Electronics Association. He's the president there, and I do a lot of work with them on the political side. He just recently wrote a book called Ninja Innovation. And essentially the message is innovate or die. You know, if we don't innovate, we're going to die. And one of the things that we can do is we can look at where the money's going. Mobile phone marketing right now is an $8 billion business. In 2 years, it's going to be $38 billion. And there's $1 trillion in venture capital going into that. One of the unique aspects that politics and nonprofits have is significant exclusions because of free speech. We can develop new technologies, and one of the conversations that I was listening to is people are saying, well, campaign managers, it's the RNC, there's money coming in for these. If you come out with a better mousetrap, doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it. You need to get the audience, you know. But you can have a significant impact outside of these with the independent expenditure efforts. I'm looking at some of my friends out here who raised millions of dollars, you know, to be able to go into different areas because people trusted them. And there's a hunger on our side, I think, with the large donors as well, to be innovative and upfront. And one of the big messages that I think we need to come away from here is we just don't need to catch up to what happened inside the cave. We need to go around. And when I made that comment about clicking on ads, a lot of you laughed. And, you know, I think it's great. I'm glad I could make a comment about it, but I shouldn't have been the first one to tell you that. I shouldn't have been the first one to tell you. I mean, your friends should have told you that. We're all techies in this thing. Why didn't each one of you click on 100 Obama ads just on your own, knowing the way that Google worked? They would have been happy, you know, and they never would have gotten your vote. So, and, you know, it's one of those things where I'm really not sure how to communicate the message out. I've been in this business for a long, long time.
Question from the audience.
I think one opportunity that's being missed is right here under your nose. We're at a major conservative political action conference, yet there are no speakers that have a serious science and engineering technology background. I mean, look at RSA, look at this conference, DEFCON, SHMUCON, all of them have major technical people. That's a data line, a place that you can go grab people, bring them here, and have them talk in front of the audience. And I mean, if I sat in one seminar that was given by Ed Scotus, and if Ed Scotus came here and gave that talk, every person in the room would run for their laptop and try to learn everything that he was talking about right then. It's that powerful. It's one of the biggest missed opportunities that if everyone is speaking in these panels, it's great that we have public policy backgrounds, but it's very rare that anybody has a science and technology background. And the only other person this conference is speaking right now in another session that all the tech people here can't go see. So I think that's just a major point that you're missing.
It's a very fair point. Most of the times, just my own personal soapbox, most of the time, the tech discussion that goes on at these conferences, not necessarily CPAC per se, but it's 4 people on a panel, they get 5 minutes